Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bridge the Gap DFS podcast. We're going to be doing a live stream here on Twitch. Welcome, everybody, to the chat. Very excited. We have one of my favorites in all of DFS joining us today, one of my best friends in all of DFS, and we connected. It's kind of funny because neither of us have very many friends in real life that play DFS. So I want to introduce our guest today. He is a cash game stud, and he's working his way through GPP life. So we've been working together on that, and just an all-around just kick-ass guy. Welcome to the show, our boy Jesse MuleyHaven on most of the DFS platforms. Jesse, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's funny because when we started working together, quote unquote, I think we were a couple of the original guys in the Manny stream, and showing up, watching the streams. I watched most of them after hours because I had busy stuff going on, and then he started the Discord, and it was like on ever since with everybody. I mean, there's so many good people in there, and I just remember, I'd see you in there, and we were DMing a little bit, and then on Daily Roto, we're connecting in the Slack chat, and then DMing on Twitter, and then text messaging, like,
Yeah,
this two have like 4 different conversations going on 4
yeah.
different platforms. And now we've even added a 5th chat that we're both a part of. So welcome to the show, buddy. Very excited to have you on. And we're going to get into some of the stuff today, some of the topics we're going to cover: NBA free agency, get into cash versus GPP. Got a couple other things to talk about. And then we're going to just talk about how you balance being a dad and a husband and working during the day and grinding DFS at night, and just getting that balance. And then we'll get into the good stuff, some of your worst experiences and some of your best experiences. So with that laid out, the first thing that I want to chat about is, you have a bit of an untraditional background into the DFS world, much like my hero Beep the Jeep. Shout out to Beep. We're going to be doing Beep I'm a Jeep week this week on the YouTube channel, so check that out this week. But tell us more about how you guys started in DFS and this crazy thing of ours that just, once you get hooked, like you're pretty much hooked for life.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing season-long fantasy baseball. I like I was telling you before, the only sport I really followed throughout my life is MLB. I'm more of a musician actor type, so I never really got into the other sports, but I always loved baseball. Loved it since I was a kid. So I did season-long. That was, that was profitable, but you don't get paid like once a year, and it's ridiculous to like tilt a night of season-long fantasy, but I did. So I tried DraftKings. I deposited. I grinded for about 6 months. Had no bankroll management. I was all in every slate. I'd listen to a podcast. I'd play like 20 different teams. I think that's probably the only way I stayed afloat. By diversifying. But I was like kind of break even. I was probably down a couple hundred when I had my first big hit, and that's sort of where it all started. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. It seems to me that the flow of a season-long player, it seems like everybody's excited. Everybody plays week 1, loses. Maybe they come back. But then by like week 8 or 9, when your season-long team has gone to crap, like everybody's back. Was that pretty similar for you?
Yeah, well, the big edge for me in baseball was that I didn't play season-long football. So everybody would bail like, by this time of year, and I played rotisserie, so I was the only one like actually studying the categories and the stats, and back then like Twitter push notifications weren't really a thing. So if there was like a closer change or something, I'd get the notification, I'd go right to my computer, it was like a huge edge. So I think just like discovering those edges in season long really helped me transition to DFS. And I was successful. Like I played a lot of leagues, so it'd be like a nice little like $5,000 payday once a year. But when you average out all the time you put into it, it's less than minimum wage, I'm sure. So
That right there, what you just said, like that's what broke my heart. That's what killed my dream. I actually about 10 years ago, I tried to do something similar on RT Sports. They had fantasy football leagues for like $30, like 200 to first. And I remember one summer, like Blaze and I think I had like 200 leagues, and he had like
oh
150
God.
leagues. And we're like, I don't know, like 24, 25 at the time, like right out of college. And the first time we have like real jobs and we have a little bit extra money. And it's like, I remember like everyone, when we like start to feel exhausted, we'd be like, dude, but if we win this, that's $200. That's a flight to Vegas. So like, we're such freaking degenerates back then. But like, nobody tells you like, and that's why like best ball leagues are awesome. Like, I actually like best ball leagues more than season long, but like nobody tells you like, after the draft, guess what? Like, you have 16 weeks of miserably managing your teams.
I know.
And there was times where like I would be like working, and then like on my like lunch breaks on Wednesdays and Friday afternoons when they did the waiver pickups, I'd have to like rush home and do a bunch of waiver ads, like 130, 150.
Yeah.
It's just, and you're right. Like, you get to the end of the year and you're like, if I'm being honest, like, because you don't win every league, you're like, I probably lost money. So now I'm like making like negative, at least for football. That's how it was for me. And I'm like, DFS is so much nicer. So yeah, I didn't intend to go down that tangent, but yeah,
I just remember being at work and like sneaking into the bathroom because like a top prospect got called up and I had to go at him on my phone, and just like 5-hour auction drafts in a span of 2 days. Like, it was a mess. Like, you think my fan prices now, it was probably worse, at least for like the draft season, you know?
Oh yeah, I was pretty much non-existent, and it gets to the point, I tried to do the sports betting thing for a while, and my girlfriend, at the time, wife now, it was like, this DFS thing better work, because between like this full-time job and this other stuff that hasn't worked out, like, I'm running out of chances here before I'm gonna have to just like find a more relaxing, not so absorbing hobby. So thank God that DFS worked out, man. And it's just, we joke around all the time. That's why I want to talk to people like you. This is one of the best cash game players, grinding the low stakes. And it's just one of those things that people think you need that big 5-figure, 6-figure hit to do well at this. And that's not the case for either. I mean, you have had a 5-figure hit, and we'll get to that later, but for the most of our reality, that's not it. It's a couple $100 here and there, and it adds up quickly.
Exactly.
So before we get into more about Jesse, I just wanted to put a bow on NBA free agency. We actually had some pretty big movement in the last week. Last week on the podcast, I had mentioned how I just did not understand how everybody is ruling out the Clippers, and Kawhi made me look like a freaking genius. And everyone is like, yeah, but, nobody thought about the Paul George thing. It's like, I know. That's why you don't jump to conclusions. Just scope it out. And that's the other thing too. Like, I want to try to talk about, if we come across something that's applicable to DFS, it's like, and this is what's so beneficial to a player like Jesse that comes from a background outside of sports, and me that doesn't really know much about baseball, is I have a clear palate. Like, it doesn't matter to me. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't pass the sniff test. And, before we get into NBA free agency, can you talk a little bit more about that, Jesse, how some of not having biases and not being the most educated person when it comes to some of this stuff, how that's actually benefited you? Because one of the things you said is grinding out those edges. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally. Just, as I started with DFS MLB, and when I wanted to branch out into other sports, I didn't know the sports at all. I totally had to learn the players, the teams, the stats. I mean, you name it. So just coming from that level, I don't have biases. Like with baseball, I want any excuse to like slam the Red Sox because they're my team and I'm going to be watching them anyway. So I have that. But in other sports, I don't. Like, I don't care about what players I'm using. I trust the math. I don't have any I don't watch any of the ESPN hot takes. I don't listen to talk radio. I keep all that stuff out of my head, and I think it's really beneficial. When you're in like some discords, you'll just see so many hot takes and so many narratives, and it's just like I love to see people using that stuff. I mean, it just means there's still an edge. So I think just learning the sports blindly and just digging in. I mean, I learned NASCAR a couple of years ago, and I wouldn't ever be caught dead watching a race if there wasn't money on the line. So, I mean, it's amazing. Like, and I'll say to myself, oh, I want to learn MMA, or I want to learn tennis, but I know nothing about it, so why try? But then I'll be like, hey, you did it with all these other sports, why not? So it's good. I'm really happy to come in fresh because I really don't care who wins. I don't follow the standings unless it's like towards the end of the year and it's actually relevant to DFS. So
Now I'm gonna add, that is something I want to circle back on, starting a new sport. But I wanted to pick your brain. I know that one of the things that we connected on is we were over in the Daily Roto chat, and the Daily Roto for basketball is just phenomenal, and it's just so fun when they nail it and everybody in the chat's just celebrating to no end. Like, it's such a cool experience, and that is one of my favorite things about the culture at Daily Roto. But I saw at the end of the year, especially, you were killing it in the showdown, so I definitely want to get your input on this. How do you think Kawhi and Paul George teaming up to the Clippers, how do you think that's going to affect their, not so much their team perspective, but do you think they can both be fantasy relevant? We see that sometimes with multiple superstars. It's really hard to get 60-point output on a regular basis.
Yeah, like I come from a cash game mindset, so obviously I'm looking for the nights where one of them's resting. But I think as far as like GPP goes, just spreading your exposure out and hoping you get one of them to go off. I feel bad for whoever they're playing against. I mean, that like wing perimeter defense is going to be amazing. So I would definitely like factor that into any opponents that are facing them. But yeah, I tend to like. I don't really follow the NBA preseason. I used to play, but kind of got sick of it. So I'll definitely like pay attention to the preseason stuff for like new groups of players and everything, and just try to get a handle on it. But I salivate at like the thought of like a Westbrook staying on the Thunder or something like that. Like I'm looking for that one guy that has all the usage for cash games at least.
Well, and that's interesting because that was one of the things that we talked about last week with NBA, that, in baseball we say, find the runs, win the slate. But on basketball, it's very much like find the minutes, find the usage, find the minusage. We're probably going to make a word out of that for basketball.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much how you do it. And that's a really good point, because that's one of the things in basketball, I think, from a GPP perspective, is when it is an obvious night, like let's say Kawhi's resting and it's a Paul George night. Most of the people are just going to want to be even with the chalk in a GPP. And that is something that it's like, if it's Paul George night and he's going to be on the court for 36 minutes and be handling the ball, dude, Paul George, 100% of my lineups, I don't care. If that's what the numbers dictate. And again, that comes from, purging your bias. And it's interesting because I think it's very applicable to what we're going to be seeing now in Houston. We talked about last week in the podcast, the Rockets hadn't done anything but never rule out Daryl Morey. When everyone else is playing checkers, he's playing chess, and he threw a haymaker. A lot of people are like, I don't like the fit. These are too high usage guys, ball hog city. And it's like, I don't know, but all I know is you need superstars to win in the NBA, and he made the right move, and who cares about the contract? And I don't know what to make of the situation. I still think it's going to be Harden's show. I don't think Russ can play second fiddle, but he did defer to George a little bit more this year. How do you think these two former, now reunited teammates are going to get along in Houston?
Good. I think like for DFS purposes, like Houston did a good job like rotating Paul and Harden so they weren't always on the court at the same time. And I hope they do that with Westbrook. So I'm really like excited. They're going to be really fun games to watch, and I'm just like super excited. And again, hopefully, there'll be some nights where one of them rests. But I'm really looking forward to the DFS experience with those guys. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, it's funny too. I was thinking about, like, someone made a comment about, now Capella's never going to, touch the ball because, Westbrook shoots so much. And I'm like, he also shoots pretty poorly. So
yeah, right.
some indirect alley-oops to Capella. And I expect, I think they're going to find a way to work, especially, they're both high energy guys. It's going to be, neither of them like to play defense that much, so we could see some, the scoring was at an all-time high, and the flow was at all-time high. And I expect that they're going to want to try to blitz teams to death, especially they're a franchise with two young guards that play pretty much the whole game, every game. That is one thing. Say what you want about Harden, say what you want about Westbrook. Those guys don't miss time very often. Like if they miss time, like they have to be really hurt. So
unlike the Lakers stars. So
seriously,
I think with the Lakers, you'll get a lot of one of them sitting, and you'll have that chalk. So
that's what we want. That's what we want. Yeah, it's exactly. So funny.
We want the weak, soft
we're rooting
guys.
for from a DFS perspective is so much different than the real perspective. kind of talking about last week with
Yeah,
Derek. When it's Derrick Rose night, like hog that ball, Derrick Rose.
yeah. But like when I heard about the Westbrook trade, I just heard like Westbrook to Rockets, and my first thought was Capella's gone. Like how they kept him. That's so cool. Like they're gonna be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, Daryl's a master, man. I mean, their bench, it is what it is. It's gonna have. I don't know if they brought Gerald Green back, but Austin Rivers is a fine bench player, and they'll have Gordon standing in the corner, PJ Tucker standing in the corner. Gordon will play his defense and shoot threes. Tucker will board D up and shoot threes. So it's just so exciting because this is the first time ever that I can remember. Probably my whole life of being a basketball fan, like you, I got into basketball because of Michael Jordan. So every year you knew who was going to win the title, and then a couple times you'll have a team like the Pistons come out of nowhere, or the Celtics when they got the big three together. But I couldn't tell you. You could make a case for 7 to 10 teams, maybe even a couple more, depending on some moves that are going to be made. Which leads us to our next guy here is, what do you think is going to happen with Chris Paul? You think he's going to stay there, or you think Presti's going to unload him for more youth?
Yeah, you would think that there's no reason to keep him. Like I heard the Heat. I thought that might have been like a good place for him to go. I'm a Bulls fan, so I'm always I always want them to have anybody decent. So that's my bias. So but I would like my number one spot I think would be the Heat for him.
So that would be the number one spot for Heat as a fan, or from as a DFS enthusiast?
I think for DFS purposes, like I think he would do well there.
I think it makes sense too, because it'd be him and buckets, and they get Adebayo back, and they could probably get rid of some of their expiring contracts. They could Dragic, ship him out. I think that makes sense. The other spot that I heard is maybe Detroit, and of course Laker fans think there's some way. I don't know a ton about the salary cap, but I don't know how they can afford $3 $50 million contracts to make that work. Although like the Lakers are already so much of an S show that I would love to see Paul there just to make it interesting. But I think you're right. I think Presti, we're gonna see Paul move one more time for some youth or some expiring contracts to complete their rebuild. But I wanted to touch back on something that we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. You had said, hey, you know what? When I'm thinking about going through a new learning process, learning a new sport, I never thought I'd get into NASCAR. Now I play NASCAR, and I don't do MMA, but I think about it, and I've done it before. I think that's really interesting. So the first question I have is, what leads you into getting a new sport? Is it curiosity? Is it boredom? Do you look at the DFS sports as, separate income streams? What's your main motivation for picking up a new sport?
Trying to find the edge. Like luckily I didn't start in DFS until 2016, so I still have low stakes eligibility. So if I can only get a certain amount of action in, say, like MLB Cash Games, I want to. And obviously the cash games aren't what they used to. That's an honest, truism. But so I'm always looking for other ways to get the same amount of volume that I used to. So just starting anything where I can just play low stakes, like if I can just play quarters and dollars and $2 table setters, MMA, and just max everything, I'd much rather do that than have to like move up stakes in cash games. Like I don't want to be playing like the $10 like 33% to first GPPs in a sport that I already know, like MLB. I'd rather go to something low stakes and learn that and have weaker competition. So it's really just a volume thing. Like I have 2 kids and a wife, so I don't have time. I rarely can play 2 different sports in a day. But if it's like a soft time of year where there's not a lot going on, or I can't get any action in MLB Cash, which this time of year it becomes really tough, I have to try to branch out. More people, NASCAR's only once a week. More people play it. It's easy to do because it's on the weekend. I have time to do it, and I'm definitely looking for other stuff like that. Something like WNBA I would love to do. I tried, but it kills me because I can't be on my phone. I'm on my phone for basketball season. I need a break. I can't follow all the beat writers on Twitter and neglect my children. I do that for 6 months of the year in NBA when I'm sitting there reading my kid a book and I have my cell phone hidden behind it, trying to like catch scratches and breaking news. So it's like I honestly tried like the first day of WNBA and I said, screw this, I'm done.
It's funny. I tried WNBA the first day also, and I had a guard who was like 9,100, and I think she scored 9 points. She got to 1x, and I was like,
Yeah.
did she get hurt? Like what? I don't like you said. Like I love basketball, but like I'm so glad it's baseball season because yeah, basketball it is very much like you were saying. Like you want edges. Like if you can't monitor everything that's changing throughout the night, like you're drawing dead. So I can
Exactly.
totally appreciate that. Now let me ask you this. So you just said something that I really like, and pretty much the whole reason why I started my YouTube channel a year ago is like I'm obsessed with bankroll management, and there wasn't very many good articles out there for bankroll management. I had to basically create my own system. It works for me, but it's very encouraging for me to hear somebody like you that gets it from a bankroll management perspective. Now, is that just from common sense, or is some of your cash game background leading into having a smart plan in place? What led to that's pretty sharp bankroll management? What led to that?
Yeah, well, like I said, when I played, when I started, I was literally like going all in every slate. I had a couple $100 in my account. It wasn't until I had a couple big scores and the MLB season was about to start, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get serious about this. I'm going to, play 5 to 10% of my bankroll every night. I deposited, a small amount of my winnings, like $1,800 I started with. I finally invested in some good projections. I said, I'm not going to get my picks from podcasts anymore. And that was the difference. I just decided to be smart about it and decided to stop just going all in every slate, and it was fun, and I had some good scores doing that, playing kind of reckless, but and I was lucky. I could have busted out just as easily. So once I started doing that, I think I think it was the 2017 MLB season, and since then I've never played more than like 5 to 8% of my bankroll on a slate, and as my bankroll's gotten bigger, now I never really even play more than 5%. Like the most I'll go is 5%. This football season will be a test of my willpower because I'll be tempted to go past 5, and I might, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm very conservative. I don't like losing. I hate losing streaks. I want to minimize them. When I lose 10 days in a row, I don't want it to be half of my money.
That's the big thing that I don't think people really understand is, even if you were sticking to, I'm only going to play a max of 10% a day, there's a thing called risk of ruin, and pretty much 10 days can wipe you out. And if you have money to reload, that's fine. But if you don't, like, that's why you're never going to get ahead in this. So I really appreciate your approach to that. And it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're just failing a little bit slower than everybody else, you get to learn a little bit more, and you get to learn a little bit more. And when they're out, we're still learning. And I just really admire that about you. And it's one of my favorite things about your approach. And I just think it's really refreshing for me to hear that, hey, you know what? You get it. You're doing well in this game. I get it. I'm doing well in this game. We have this thing in common where we're starting low. We're putting in our work. We're okay we don't have to be, DFS savants at everything. We're willing to walk away stuff that we don't like. We're keeping it fun, but we're also not, putting ourselves in a position, because I talk about it pretty often. This can go from fun to addiction very, very fast. And I hate losing also, and I lose a lot. And it doesn't take much, as calm and cool as I seem, like it doesn't take much like under the surface for me to like feel like I'm like I just wrapped up a 3-week downswing, finally out of it. But like,
yes,
you catch me some point during that downswing. Thank you. You catch me some point in that downswing. Like I can tell you within the next like 3 weeks how I'm gonna be homeless. Like that's how fast things can like spiral out of control for me. So it's responsible gaming. We're not trying to be a couple of corny dudes here. Like the more responsible you are, the longer you can stick around and just fail a little bit slower than everybody else. So the next thing I want to talk about is your transition from cash to GPP. Did you always dabble in both? I know that your foundation is cash games. Talk to me a little bit more about what allured you to cash games versus GPPs, and what is going into your process right now from the transition to doing both.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've always played GPPs. I've just never like MME'd or used an optimizer. On like weekly sports like football and NASCAR, I was literally like building 150 lineups by hand. Like I literally had, my friends will tell you, I had sheets where I tracked my exposures on a piece of paper, and it actually worked fine for football and NASCAR last year. Now I'm actually not using using them for NASCAR. I'm doing them with an optimizer unless it's a plate race, which is another story. But yeah, it was just, you see that's where the money is, but you need a higher risk tolerance. And part of I'm definitely guilty of playing scared sometimes. I like to have consistent profits. I like to be a profitable player every month. I may not be shooting for $100,000. I hardly ever play those contests, honestly. I'm just trying to grind a profit. I'm trying to make about half of what I do at my regular job. That way I get to go to work every day knowing I make more than my bosses, and that's awesome, And if I do happen to bank something, great. I've done it before, and you're out every day. I put myself in a position to win a lot of money, even if it's a day where my cash team goes off. People always talk about cash doesn't have an upside, but it's not like I don't have my cash lineup in GPPs. And sometimes my cash lineup's going to be naturally contrarian, and there's certainly days where it's gone ham and I win a lot. But this year specifically, I've been watching the Manny stream for a long time. I never actually had Fantasy Cruncher, which seems kind of dumb to be watching it without being a Fantasy Cruncher sub. But he taught me a lot of great stuff for football that I just kind of incorporated into my hand builds. But yeah, I watched the stream for a long time. I finally bit the bullet. $60 a month. I'm going to get Fantasy Cruncher. I started MMEing just this year for MLB. Opening day, I screwed up my CSV. I had a train of my freaking cash lineup in like 300 lineups. It was awful. That contributed to my crappy ROI this season in GPP. I've also screwed up different CSVs a couple of times. I missed lock by like 5 minutes one time. So I'm still learning. From what I've found is the simpler the better. I like to trust projections. I try not to go down too many rabbit holes. I try to keep it simple. And if I'm going to tweak something, I try to make it like a minimal tweak. If that is relatable to anyone, like I think I really got in my own way a lot when I started. And I've had some success. And just like you've said in the past, like just playing fearless. Today I stacked against Chalk J Happ. I stacked Blue Jays. I don't know how they're doing, but he was like 70% owned. Everybody has him. Blue Jays weren't the top projected offense, but I slammed them. So we'll see how it goes. I'm either going to win it all or lose it all. So yeah, so it's been really fun. It's a lot more fun to sweat like 150 lineups than one, especially if your SP2 like blows up in the first inning. So yeah, I'm still learning. One thing I don't go in over my head. I've never maxed, like I wouldn't max that $6 they had the other day. I'm sticking to the low stakes. If I do anything higher stakes, it's usually like a 3-entry max, something I hand build. I'm just trying to learn before I swim with the sharks, and that's been really helpful. I don't go over my head until I'm confident in my process. I had a really bad month in June. It was my first losing month I've ever had since I started playing a couple years ago. And as a cash game player, that may sound crazy, but as a cash game player, I've been really fortunate to be consistently profitable. So after I had that really bad month, I said, you know what, I'm going to get back to basics a little and start posting higher stakes head-to-heads, like posting like 50s and 109s, get back to basics, get back to what I'm good at and that I know I can be profitable at, kind of right the ship, and then I'll go back into GPPs, when I'm a little more comfortable. But every day, even if I'm not playing GPP, I'm still, studying lineups and putting in the work.
I mean, it's so important. I talk about it all the time. And please let me know if you disagree, because I say this on the video streams, the YouTube's like it's biblical truth. But I think DFS is pretty simple. Is at its core, it's a leverage game. Number one, you've got to be willing to put in the work. And in number two, manage your bankroll in a disciplined fashion, or vice versa. And then three, be patient, and like you said, like just always having that that learning mindset. I love working and talking with people like Jesse because he doesn't have an ego, and I try not to either. And it's hard, especially when I win. When I have a night like I had last night, like I want to tell everybody about it, but that's not what a professional does. There's some people that do it. And Manny actually did it last night, but he deserved to do it because he had a rough season, and it was great to see him bust out of the slump with a big monster win like that. But I just want to also point out, I don't know if you're intentionally doing this, but you're running your DFS like a side business. I heard you say I started small, and when I could afford to, I reinvested. Any small business, what do? You start out by yourself, you're working in your garage, you make a little bit of
Yeah.
money, then you can start buying some better tools. And that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. And this isn't a complicated thing. It's very, very simple at its core. And I just love how you're building around simple processes, and you're a cash game player, I'm a GPP player, and there's so much crossover. And that's why I just try to tell everybody, like, stop worrying so much about like what goes into the game, build the foundation, learn first, and you can have as much success as you want. You can take this as far as you want to just by being able to stay in the game.
Totally. I mean, if you told me I was going to break even every day, but would still have a chance at that one huge hit, I'd be for it. It's like the fact that I can grind cash and still, and like it's not great. Like a 15% ROI this year, I think I'm at like 12 for baseball, and I'm like -4 for baseball GPP. So it's nothing spectacular, but it pays the bills, and if you're a GPP player and you want to do some cash on the side just to fund your GPP, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about it, and I'm really fortunate to do it and to be confident in my process, even when it doesn't work out.
And that's okay. It's process over everything, process over results, and I always process over profits. If you put your process first, the profits are going to come. And I just think it's so important to just, like you said, it's like when I had a bad month, you're just saying I had a bad month. So what did I do? I went back to basics. Simplify. I'm simplifying things. It's because it's going to happen. I was just working this whole week. I spent working with Kreller, our buddy Kreller, on some baseball stuff. And that's why it helps to work with like-minded individuals that get it, because when you start putting more eyes on a problem, you start seeing things in a different way. And, iron sharpens iron. Like we're getting better. Like that's why a sport like MMA, you have the best jiu-jitsu guys. The better they get together, the better they are versus their competition. And that's what I cherish about a community like what Manny has. And I'm just very much a big fan of yours, and you've encouraged me to get into cash. I'm not going to yet. When I get kicked out of the lower stakes, I'm definitely going to need to start supplementing my income and leaning on you. But one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit more about is you said that you are open for business, like you're willing to help anybody that wants to learn cash. So talk a little bit more about. I'm a complete dumbass when it comes to cash. So like, let's just go start to bottom. I'm in front of my computer. I'm building a cash lineup for MLB. This is the first thing that I look at.
Yeah, totally. I look at Vegas totals, obviously. I subscribe to multiple projections. Daily Roto I use, the Bat, SaberSim. I'll look at everything. I'll run some optimals. And then I also like to look at Osimo ownership. These days, top ownership is usually the best plays. I hate to say it. You don't get those, like, I think one time this year we had like Eric Sogard was chalk and he was like a really bad play. But other than that, like usually the chalk are the best plays. And in cash games, if I have one hitter that has like a 0.5 point projection less than another, and that one hitter is going to be higher owned, like he's going to be chalk, like 50% owned, I'm just going to use him to block, because if he goes off and I don't have him, I don't feel like getting wiped out. Like I'd rather lose like 40% than lose it all, So yeah, just as far as cash goes, there's just a lot of things that people don't tell you. You don't hear it from touts. I like to call it the game within the game. Like when you're posting head-to-heads, when lock hits, you always want to withdraw like any unsold head-to-head because it's going to get matched with somebody else in the lobby. And that player, most of the people posting are pretty good because if you post, you might get, you could get scooped by a shark. So the people that are in the lobby are really pretty good players. But there's a lot of. I'll go through the lobbies. I'll hunt for people without experience badges. I know that's bad, but my kids have to eat too, so I'll do that. Entering the right contests, like I'll never go into a double up that's not single entry. I'll do as many of the $1 to $3 that the sharks aren't in. When I started, I'd play a $5 double up where Chipotle Addict could have 50 lineups. And it's just stupid stuff like that you do when you start that you don't realize. Um, so just all this little stuff is just so important.
So I want to jump in because you just said something that as much as I've been involved with DFS, I did not know this existed until I read that book by Dan Barbasari, Dueling with Kings, and he was telling a story about, like, I think CSU Ram forgot to unpost head-to-heads and it got matched up. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm explaining this correctly. So let's say I have 10 head-to-heads that have not been picked up yet. It's automatically going to be paired with whomever else has a head-to-head that has not been picked up yet. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that means
and
it's going to be a really good cash player, right?
Yeah, especially when you
That's
get
crazy.
$5 and up, because the sharks are banned from $1 to $3. So if you're starting out, I wouldn't ever post anything over $5. Just stay 1, 2, 3. Do all the single entry 50/50s. The rake has not gone up on cash games in a long time. It may have on like the multi-entry double ups, but I don't even deal with those anywhere. I mean, the rake is still the same for a $1 head-to-head as it was a few years ago. You know, it's still the same for a 50/50. So that's an edge right there. Like, a lot of people crap all over cash games. But you know, there's an edge. When I'm playing $109 head-to-heads in NBA and I'm going through some of those lineups, like some of the lineups are egregious, and it's like, why wouldn't you do this? Wouldn't you play a GPP that paid out $200 to first, and it was one opponent, and he was maybe like a Grizzly fan, and he played like 4 of them. So it's just like there are edges, you know, and it's just you have to take what the lobbies will give you. Like baseball, I get half the action that I did last year. Like, cash games aren't doing that well. So I'll just play half the action. Because I don't get my normal volume, I'm not going to go and enter like multi-entry $25 double ups. I'm not going to post $1,000 head-to-heads and risk getting like scooped up by a shark. I'm just going to play a little less, try to keep the same ROI and be content with that. Like, all my income's supplemental. I don't use any of my DFS income to pay bills, to pay rent. I mean, it's all just extra money. So part of that is just maintaining your edge and not going beyond your means. And that's been an important lesson for me for baseball, because NBA and NFL, I can pretty much get the volume that I want and need. But this year in baseball has been a struggle.
Now, let me ask you this. You touched on something that I want to ask you a follow-up question on. So you had said that you only do single entry double ups. Is there a reason why that is? That most players, I mean, I'm a cash game dummy. I enter everything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because, well, like for a multi-entry double up, like Chipotle Addict can have 50 lineups. He can have 50 of the same lineup. Okay. So in the contest I play, I only want to compete against one Chipotle Addict lineup. The sharks can mass enter those, and that's how they do that, because they need the volume. I don't need the volume, so I'm going to play the single entry games where it's only one of them.
I got you. Now, when you are posting those 109, the $50 head-to-head, some of the higher level stuff, do you take advantage of the number of times that people can pick that up? Because I know that is something that you can do in DraftKings, is limit the number of times someone picks up on it. Okay.
I limit every head-to-head to 1. When you start posting those, odds are the sharks are going to get you. And that's what happened to me. I was playing Hoop. I was playing Empire. You either have to beat them, block them. Those are your 2 options, you know. So you got to use your 10 blocks wisely. You got to see the guys that are taking your games that you can't beat. You got to track your head-to-head results. RG contest, RG the result, no, what's it called? The data analyzer, whatever the Roto Grinders thing is. You can track your record against any opponent you've ever played if you download your contest history to that. I track all my opponents. I urge anybody that plays DFS to do it. At the end of the slate, look through the lineups of your opponents. Start a spreadsheet. Write down the players that have egregious, crappy lineups. Track them all. Find the guys that are beating you. Block them. That's what I do. It's really important. Like I said, the game within the game. I'm always aware of who my opponents are. Even sometimes, like, some really good players don't care. They're just going to scoop you because they want the volume. Honestly, like, I've gone to people on Twitter, not to be a DICK, but, you know, I've gone to people and I've been like, dude, we played 240 head-to-heads. I have a 51% win rate versus you. We're just paying rate. Can you please? And I'm nice about it, but I'm like, can you please stop taking my games? And usually they're pretty cool about it. Like I've gotten some like really good players to just leave me alone. It's just ridiculous. Like I don't know why some people just want to play other good players. I guess it's just because they have volume or they want volume. And I know DraftKings like VIP will do like incentives for getting a lot of volume, so maybe it could have something to do with that. But when I look through my head-to-heads, nothing infuriates me more than like when there's a good player that I played and it's like 40, I played him like 300 times. And it's like we have like a 49, 51, 52% win rate. It's like, dude, we're just donating to DraftKings every time you scoop me. It's so dumb.
I mean, it may be dumb, and it is dumb, but like for someone like me, I've never even thought about that. Like I love
Yeah,
how you're constantly looking for edges, and I think that's so important for especially people like us that we try to take more of an outside the box approach to DFS. Is any little edge, they start to add up to the point where you can do things and they just become naturally a part of your process that are so advantageous that all those little small edge become a really big edge. And all DFS is just grinding out edges and making less mistakes than everybody else. What you just described, that's 5 or 6 things that I did. Like it's funny because sometimes, I'm running out of buy-ins, so I try to check in about once a month to see where I'm at. So I'll scroll all the way to the bottom of my DraftKings CSV, and it's like CSU Ram, Condia,
yeah,
all of these studs when I first started playing because
yeah,
I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and
yeah,
I remember like being one of those people when I first started, like this is rigged. I don't like these robots. Like this is unfair because I just a
yeah,
a
dude.
dumbass. So
Dude, yeah, like I seriously like will switch. I'll switch my player blocks like based on sport. Like honestly, today I went in and I unblocked somebody from baseball, and then I blocked this pro that scoops my 109 NASCAR games. So like I unblocked a guy that kills me in baseball to block a NASCAR guy, and then tomorrow I'll go back and like switch them. Like using those 10 blocks is so important. Like people don't realize it. Like if your 10 blocks aren't full, you got to go in there, go to whatever it's under. I forget what it's under, but it's a email customer support. They'll help you out. But use your blocks if you're playing cash games. It's really important.
see, and that's another thing. I use my blocks, but it's usually from people sending me like $1 5 man. So I'm like, I'm not playing
Yeah,
this
yeah.
waste of
Well, that's a
time.
separate section. You can block those guys too.
But I mean that like that's an edge. Like I'd never even would have thought about adjusting my number one using them, number two adjusting them, and like you said, like you can't have an ego and try to get better at this game. You could go into this and turn it into a what measuring contest. That word that you just spelled, that big word that
Yeah,
you just spelled. But you're not. You're playing the game. You're playing a finesse game. If you look at some of the all-time greatest minds in sports, the West Coast offense was designed because Bill Walsh could not run the ball. They had to go to a short passing game, a finesse game. Look at Belichick. He almost never has the most talented defense, but they play a finesse game. They're positioned well. They're taking their angles. They're studying their opponents. Like this is not like complicated stuff here. Like this is very applicable, universal stuff that's withstood the test of time. So, man, I just appreciate the heck out of the game theory. Like I love the game behind the game, watching these games, but also playing this game. And this is some good stuff, man.
sure, man.
So let's talk
And
about. Sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, and this is all stuff I had to learn through trial and error on the job. Like I wish somebody was there to tell me all this stuff. Like, and you could listen to 100 podcasts or watch 100 tout shows, and you may not. This may be the first time you're hearing it, and if it is, and I'm offering you something that you haven't heard before, that's my dream and my goal. So I'm happy to help. I want to grow the lobbies. I want to help. I want my double ups to be bigger. Just don't take my games, and I'm cool. I want to keep cash games alive. Or if you're bad, do take my games. That's fine.
If you're good, limit to one or leave me alone.
Yeah.
So
If
I
you want
want
to see my lineup, just ask me. I'll email it to you after the slate. You don't have to scoop me.
well, I wanted to chat more about. Okay, so let me walk you through what I would do for a baseball cash lineup, and then you could critique it. So this is what I would assume that I would do. I would probably start out with, let's say Scherzer's pitching tonight. I would pick up Scherzer, and then I would want to get a piece of, the Colorado game, a piece of the Texas game, and then maybe fit in a starting pitcher that made sense with money left over. Is that good? Is that bad? How do you?
Yeah, well,
What would you do better?
cash games have changed a lot. I mean, they're harder. In the old days, you were looking for, guys that were going to put the ball in play, guys that wouldn't strike out, pitchers that were safe. These days, I don't really consider that stuff. There's so many home runs that I just go for upside. And I try to trust the math, trust projections. Like I'm okay with playing like a punt pitcher. Can you still hear me? I'm sorry, you cut
we're
out
good.
a little.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm okay with doing that. I'm looking for upside. I'm fine with playing like a Joey Gallo even if he strikes out 5 times. I think the games have changed a lot. And same goes for basketball, where sometimes it's good to take on more variance and to take on more risk. Because when I play cash games, I don't want to just beat like 55% of the people, Like if you're winning 55% of your cash games, you're breaking even with the rake, So I want my cash team to smash. I want to beat I want to sweep my opponents. I want my cash lineup that's in GPPs to like 10x. Like I'm going for upside. And I think this day and age you have to. The way this year has worked out, the pricing on DK started out really, really tight. So it was really hard. You had to punt your catcher every day. I think they kind of got the message and the feedback, and they've softened up the pricing since then. But yeah, I'm definitely looking for upside. I look at, like I said, I look at projections. I look at ownership. I look at run totals. I definitely want a piece of teams with high totals. I like to look at, I'll look at the bat team totals. I'll look at the SaberSim team totals. I don't always just rely on Vegas just because the public can move those lines and they're not always. I look at a lot of stuff. And that's been really beneficial. And after a while, you just kind of get it. Like every day I download the $25 single entry double up CSV, and I just go through the whole thing. I study all the players, just like a lot of the good GPP players do, just like Manny does. I study cash players just like you guys study GPP players. If I'm on the same lineup as Hoop or Empire Maker or something, I'm like psyched. Like that. Like a few days last week, I had the same lineup as Chipotle, and I was like, one day it sucked, but I'm like, you know what? Hey, I'm on the same process as one of the best players in the game. That's pretty cool. I don't even care that I lost. So just study, see what the best cash game players are doing. Just like people study Osimo and all those great GPP players.
So you just mentioned something else that's kind of paradigm shifting for me is, again, I know nothing about cash, but I always thought, hey, you want to play like the best values, the safe stuff. So it's very interesting to hear you say, I want upside, because at GPP, that's all we do. We want upside. But that makes a lot of sense, because if you're finishing third with your cash lineup across the board, you're not hitting that 55% mark. You're sweeping the board. You're improving that win rate.
Totally.
You're not worried about rake. You only pay rake when you lose, So that's incredible. I never even thought about that. So, and like you said, especially with baseball, it's so home run oriented that it would make sense that, hey, we need more than putting the ball in play now.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, playing Joey Gallo in cash was almost unheard of. But these days you have to still go for the home runs, even if you're going to risk a zero. Like I could get a zero from 3 players, but if I get home runs from 4 others, I'm still doing pretty well. It's just understanding the scoring.
That's awesome, man. So now I want to get into our favorite thing to talk about, losing. So
yeah,
you mentioned you had your first losing month. So number one, how many years have you been playing now?
Seriously, for about 2.5. I had about six months of just tinkering around and not playing smart. So I'd say probably 3 years total.
So that's over 2 years, so almost 30 months before you had a losing month. First of all, that is so incredible. And I want to get back to, I love what you said about having goals. You said I treat this as, a supplemental income. Like my goal is to, and it's like, let's just look at like the average, the median salary in America is $50,000. So if we want to earn half of that, let's just assume we're making $50,000 a year. That's $25,000 a year. Now you start doing the math on that and working backwards. It's like, all right, well, that's $2,000 a month. Okay. Divided by 30. So what are you talking about? 50, 60 bucks a day here? Like people don't think in terms of the, the compound interest of that thing. And I would think from a cash game perspective, making an extra $60 to $80 a day is very attainable. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. And when I say, I had this streak, like it's not all glitz and glamour. Like I'm looking through my book here, and like last July I made $32.33. So it's not like every month is like this crush. Some months, a few months, it's only been a few $100s. Some months it's multiple thousands. So it depends. But it was kind of just this silly like thing I was really excited about that I hadn't had a losing month. I mean, I could say, hey, I haven't had a losing year at least, but yeah, it was a real bummer. Last month, I only lost like $750, but still, it was kind of I was pretty bummed. Like I really liked that streak, as dumb as it sounds.
No, it's not dumb at all, because that's one of the things that, when I'm talking to new people and they want to know, like, well, why should I be listening to this guy? Like, that's one of the things that I talk about. It's like, well, I made X amount of dollars playing this last year. It outperformed the, consulting that I do on the side. I had an 80-hour-a-week job that I hated that I'm now spending about 5 hours a week on, dedicating all of my time to doing stuff like this now. That's why I had 2 losing months all of last year. So I think that's important, not so much the monetary goals like that. It's fun to win money, but having these external goals. I love the story of Shaun White, the Olympian. When he was training for the Olympics, he wanted to win first place in the contest leading up to the Olympics. But he also said, a lot of these competitions are sponsored by car companies. So I wanted to see how many competitions I could win and how many cars I could win along the way. So he ended up winning 15 extra cars. So that's like, an external additional fun goal. So you have your serious goal. I want to, make money, but my fun goal is X, Y, or Z, and so I'd have, goal number 1 for me was stop depositing, no more depositing, right? It's a great goal. That's the type of goals that people should have. And then after that, it was like, after college, I substitute taught for about 6 months, and it paid about $100 a day. And I would when I starting to figure things out at DFS, I was like, if I could just make $100 a day doing this, like, man, you know what? Like, that would be just like mind blowing, right? And then you start doing a little more. So it's not all about the big scores. Like, I just love where your head's at, because it's very similar to where my head's at. Is as you slowly move up, and you eat that volume like we like to do, you spread out your variance, and you can take more shots, and you can do it every day. So that is not a dumb thing. The fact that you haven't had a losing month in over 2 years is absolutely incredible. So I commend you for that. But now that we're on it, let's talk about that losing month. How terrible was it?
Oh, it was terrible. Like telling my wife, like all the times that during lock that my wife, is taking care of the kids and helping me out, like telling her after a whole month that I lost $750 after putting in all that work just feels so stupid. It's like, oh my God, like what am I doing? Why did I waste all your time? But yeah, but she knows, like all the money I win just goes to my family and helps us out. And, we can take vacations, or if some unexpected thing comes up, we have extra money. So, but yeah, it's really psychologically tough. Like, I'm not a GPP player. I don't go through these huge swings. Training my mind to do it is tough. I'm very risk averse, and anybody that says they can handle losing or think it's easy, I think is lying, unless you're just like so rich that you don't really care. But it's so mentally tough. Like, this is what we're supposed to be good at and what we love. And I always say you kind of need like an obsessive personality to be really good at DFS. But when you have that obsessive personality and you're always thinking about it, when you're losing, you're always thinking about it. So it can be really tough, just kind of balancing the highs and lows. But one thing I try to do when I am losing is I go back through my results. I go month by month. I said, hey, maybe I don't suck. Maybe I had all these other good months. That's reassuring. Talking to people is really important. Make as many friends as you can in DFS. That's so important. I don't like you were saying, I don't have any friends that play DFS. I live in Vermont, and I wear a DraftKings hat on the street. Nobody's ever said a word to me like, oh, you play draft. Like, nobody cares here. So just find your internet friends and find people you trust and that you can talk with, and that'll help get you through it. I'm not going to complain to my wife about it, she already has to deal with enough. So
Yeah, that's so funny because one of the external goals that I have is I don't want my wife to know whether I won or lost. You know, I read this book, and I'll talk about it in a future episode. But it was actually a book that a guy wrote about sports betting. But there's nothing in the book about sports betting. It's more about being a professional. And one of the things that he talks about is process over results. And at the end of the day, regardless of your results, if you can grade yourself highly in these areas, you know, your process is going to improve. And one of the things that he talks about is being emotionless and not letting anybody know how it affects you. So I think that because I the same thing, like I talk about all the time, like I love going down rabbit holes. Like nothing is more fun to me than doing that. And, you know, we joked earlier in the podcast, like, you give me a big enough losing streak, and I can tell you like how all my money will be gone, how I will be homeless, how we're going to be like moving back in with my parents, kind of
the
thing.
game is solved.
Yeah, because your mind just plays tricks on you, and we kind of talked about this week in the YouTube video about, you know, what winning does, you know, for the dopamine that you get in your brain, but what it does from a losing perspective, and how it wipes you out. So and looking at your past victories like that's phenomenal. I think that's the number one thing that helps me. So the other thing that I like talking about is, what are you doing away from the game to build yourself back up from, you know, an emotional, getting balanced back emotionally, health-wise, physically, mentally? Like, what are you doing so that when you're feeling crummy about that, you know, you look at, hey, this sucked, but my identity isn't just this thing. I have other things going on. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, totally. One thing I like to do, basically after I'm on the East Coast, so lock's at 7. Right after lock, I'm getting my kids. I read to my kids. I get them put in their pajamas, get them to bed. I'm usually done with that at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. I actually just go down to my basement and work out. It's the only I'm too lazy to get up in the morning. I have a treadmill and some weights in my basement. So I go out Monday through Friday, or if I don't work out Friday night, I'll do it Saturday morning. But that's how I like sweat the slates, and it's really healthy and really therapeutic. Like I could be sitting around watching the game, drinking beer, just stressing out. But I'll try to like that's when I'll try to like watch the Manny stream or just have like my iPad on the treadmill, do something helpful that helps my game as opposed to just tilting over player performance. Like my job's done at lock unless it's NBA and we have late swap, but my job's pretty much done at lock, and nothing. No, I'm not going to sit there and tilt player performance. I do all the time. I try not to, but at least I'm doing it on like a treadmill or I'm working out. That really helps me. Like I'm not a meditator. I don't do yoga. That's like that's like my anxiety medication is like exercise. So and doing it late at night is really helpful for me to do something healthy while bad things could be happening.
You know, it's funny because when I read, going back to the book Dueling with Kings that features Beep, they were talking about how, you know, the better you get at DFS, the less sports that you watch. And it's crazy because I remember like when I first started playing DFS, like you, it's like, well, anything's more interesting with money on it, right? So the more college football I watch with money on the line, the more of a fan I'm going to be. And so it was weird for me to hear that, but it's like I watch almost no sports. This is the first time ever, like I'm not being facetious when I say this. That house that we're renting in Austin for the summer, it doesn't have cable. So this is the first like cord cutting of my life. And I didn't watch a single minute of the NBA finals. And
Wow,
I love
yeah.
the NBA. And it's just like, because you're so emotionally invested into these games. Like, and I love what you said about like after lock, after things that are out of our control, do anything but this. And like, of course, like I sweat these games all the time. Like there was one point last night, I was up like an obscene amount of money, and it's like, okay, well, anything else I was going to try to do tonight, obviously I'm going to be distracted, you know? So it took like everything I had to like unglue my phone from my hand and put it in my room. And then it's just like, you know, I couldn't do that, but now I think it's like setting benchmarks. Like, all right, I'm not going to look at this for like 30 minutes. I'm not going to, and building that muscle up or doing something else, because again, like we want to keep this healthy. We want to keep it fun. And yeah, that's normally, you know, after lineup lock or a break, cause I play all the slates, I'm the same way, man. I put my headphones on and I'm going for a walk or a jog. I'm getting my workout in. I'm doing anything but sweating DFS. And it's just so funny. Like the more that we become professional in this, the less we're actually watching the games. And yeah, because sports very much, and football is the one exception. That is the one sport that I'll actually just be glued to the television all day Sundays. But yeah, like nothing more like, I remember when I first started playing DFS basketball, I had the league pass and I was watching every single game. And like, I was, hanging out on the couch all day, and I'm like, and then you lose money and you're like, so I basically ignored my family. I didn't do anything good from a health perspective. And now I feel like crap after losing money. So now I'm going to eat a carton of Ben & Jerry's, half-baked ice cream and feel like even worse of a turd. And now I got to get up at 6 o'clock and go to work the next day. Like, that is a vicious cycle, my friend. I did not have fun doing that. So I totally appreciate what you're saying. So now that we've covered that, before we get into the really good stuff, I do want to just, and you touched on this a little bit more, but talk to us about how, a semi-pro, like cash game player like yourself, how are you balancing, because I talk about there's two types of players. So the player that plays DFS that hates their job, that was me. And there's people that have a job that they like doing or they love doing or they enjoy doing, they don't mind it. So how are you able to balance work and your wife and 2 kids and your things at home and still be good at this game?
Yeah. No sleep. That's how. I'm up really late. I try to put in my work after the kids are sleeping. So like while I'm working out, then after the workout, it's kind of hard to go to sleep anyway if you've been working out. So I just try, that's when I'm going to catch up on Manny streams, mess around with Fantasy Cruncher, look at the next day. It's a grind. It really is, but it's not like I'm working at McDonald's. I really like doing it. And like you, I get to be at home, and just balancing the stuff with the kids is really tough. And I'm trying to take some time off this summer. MLB cash really slows down in this month in August. So as Adam Levitan says, smell the roses. I got to take time for that. I'm teaching how to ride a bike right now. I have a 1 and a 7-year-old. So, I haven't been playing as much volume this last month, and we just had All-Star break too, which was nice. So kind of keeping it putting it into perspective, and grinding that at my best edge. NBA, NFL, like I'm going to go hard. I go hard for that stuff. So this time of year is a nice time to sort of tap the brakes a little, because it's tough on my wife. Like, she appreciates the extra money, but we were having a conversation the other night. She said, it's almost during lock. She's like, it's almost harder having you here than if you were like doing this work in an office, because it's like you're there, but you can't do, like, it was really interesting. I said, yeah, you're so right. Like, and it's like not uncommon. Like, it'll be like 6:55. She brings the baby in with like a poopy diaper, and the changing table is actually like right behind me. So I'm literally like changing a diaper at 6:57, trying to like withdraw my unsold head-to-heads. It could be a real S show sometimes. So, but she's really great. And, like I said, everything I win, I just try to like put back into my family. Once in a while I'll get some clothes or something, but I just try to put that, like the other day, my kid was, he was like upset that I was on DraftKings and he was on his iPad, and I said, DraftKings paid for that iPad. It was like Christmas time, and I had a big hit, and we weren't going to get him in Italy, and I had a big hit, so we got him this iPad too, and I'm like, so I'm a great parent.
Well, it's all fun and games until dad's got to show up and drop the dad hammer, so. Well, now I want to get into the moment that we've all been waiting for. You have had a really big, awesome score, $30,000 in one day, and that is the type of day that we all dream about. So can you walk us through that story, set the settings, set the sport,
sure.
the time of year? And I believe your wife had a pretty funny reaction to it.
Yes, yeah. It was NFL Sunday, back when the Sunday night game was on the slate. It was New Year's Day. So that means like I had to wait like literally 12 months to deal with taxes and everything, which was kind of crazy. So I went to my mom's house for a New Year's Day dinner with my sister and her fiance fiance and family. I think I built lineups in the morning. The funny thing is there was back then I didn't have projections. I listened to a few podcasts. I looked at Vegas stuff. I was still learning football. I didn't know any of the players or teams really well. So I had Adam Levitan's Twitter push notifications on. He tweets out this article about this running back. I know you're a Niners fan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he tweets out this article about this guy Sean Drawn. He was a running back, I think, for the Niners a few years back.
Yep.
I read the whole article. Basically said he was getting like start that day, and they're basically like his career's kind of on the line. Like he's kind of playing for a contract next year. And he was talking about how much incentive he has and how much. So I seriously like played a narrative, and he turned out to be 2% owned and did really well, and he was a big part of that team. But to the day, it's so funny because my sister's fiance, after like a year later, he said when we left that day, it was probably like 6 o'clock, like the 4 o'clock games were halfway through. He said that I said to him, he said, "Oh, I might have a chance to win a couple $100 today. I've got this really good lineup going here." He told me about that. I got up. So yeah, we got home. The Sunday night game was on. It was like Packers Lions. I had just one guy left. It was Devontae Adams. I don't remember where I was, but it wasn't any serious money. It was a couple $100. He caught a touchdown, and then I was in like third place or something. I was winning like 10 grand, and I was like going nuts. Meanwhile, this was at like not 10:30 at night. My wife had already gone to bed. I didn't know about any chats. There was no Discord. I didn't have any friends that played DFS. I was really sweating by myself. Like I had nobody to talk to. I had nobody to reach out to and be like, holy crap, like this is amazing. So then he catches a second touchdown pretty late in the game, and that's when I went to first. Now this was a $4 3 max for 30K to first. Like, tell me the last time you've seen something like that on DraftKings. It's pretty crazy that you could put $4 and only have to play like against 3 pro lineups and have that kind of like 30K to first, 20K to second, 10K to third. It was really nice. And it was like 96,000 people. So I was pretty amazed. So the game ended. Remember Zach Zenner. I remember he was like on the other team. The guy behind me had him. So I'm like sweating this like really horrible running back on the Lions in like garbage time. I'm like, why are they running the ball? So it was pretty crazy. And then it ended. I went upstairs. I woke my wife up, told her I won $30,000. She yelled at me for waking her up. She was kind of out of it, so I don't think she was it. So then I went back downstairs. It was really hard to fall asleep. The next morning, it kind of sunk. I was like super excited. And that's the story. It was pretty good.
Dude, that's amazing.
Imagine woken up, told you win 30K, and yells at you for waking her up.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Somebody died? No, then why are you waking me up right now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I said, I hadn't put in the time back then. Like that was, and it's so funny because I was going through the photos in my phone. I was like going through pictures of my kids, and I saw like a couple weeks ago, and I saw the lineup, and I could only remember a couple players that were on it. It turned out it was a freaking game stack. Like back before, I didn't even know I was doing a game stack. It was like Breeze, Cooks, and then like the Falcons were like Freeman, Julio Jones. Like it was a game stack, and I'm like, oh my god, I just probably that by luck I fell into this game stack and it went off. Like imagine, like it's crazy. And now it's like I'm all game stack, so it's like
that's amazing, dude. Well,
yeah,
that I had heard kind of the Cliff Notes version of the story. I hadn't heard the full version, and when you told me earlier that there's an angle about your wife getting pissed about it, I just had to hear that part. So
yeah.
Well, Jesse, I really appreciate you, man. I had a total blast. We were talking a little bit earlier before the show. I want to have you on a regular basis, so we'll bring you back for all of August. Is going to be nothing but football talk, getting ready for football. So love to have you come back on and pick your brain about cash games, and then you and I can talk about some of the things that we're going to be doing differently than maybe in the years past that we can take advantage of out the gate, because that's one of the funny things that people will say before we wrap up. They're like, DFS is, it's not going to be as big. It's like, dude, like I had $3,000 in play last year, week 1 of like dollars and quarters. Like, you think DFS is dying? Wait till you see the record-setting contests that are going to be available in the lobby in about 6 weeks. So it's going to be awesome, man. And I just want to thank you again, dude. You're a absolute treasure and a huge asset to the DFS community. If you guys want to follow Jesse on Twitter, Jesse, why don't you hit him with your Twitter?
Yeah, it's at MuleMang, MuleMang. Feel free to DM me if you need any help or advice. If you don't believe me and you want to see my results, I'm an open book. I'm really I really want to help people because I want to grow the game. I don't have any financial, personal, career interest in this. I'm just happy, to walk people through and try to get more people into cash games and keep them alive.
Yeah, I agree, man. That's my whole attitude is the more players we can empower, the more the game's going to grow, the more money that's going to be in the lineup, and the more we can continue to do this thing that we love to create more time to spend times with the people that we love. So again, Jesse, thank you guys, everybody that tuned into the Twitch stream. I thank you guys, everybody that's downloading on any of the podcast platforms. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you. The more that you guys enjoy this, the longer we can keep doing it. And I just want to thank you again, Jesse. And anybody hit Jesse up, he'll help you. He will show. He's literally shown me his results. He keeps it on a notepad. He will show you. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
You got it, buddy.
Thank you.
I'll see you later.